Happy Let's Talk Tuesday. Today we have Gift of Life Michigan's Living Differently Youth Roundtable, where we will be understanding the youth perspective on receiving a transplant. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. So we're going to get started in just a moment, but I first wanted to thank Gift of Life Michigan for this opportunity to listen to the experiences of young transplant recipients. And to everyone that is watching at home on Facebook Live or YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. And before we have everyone introduce themselves, I want to say a little bit about myself. So my name is Srishti Gowda, and I am a senior at Troy High School. I'll be the moderator for tonight's discussion. I became involved with organ donation in 8th grade when I found out that my English teacher, Ms. Costello, needed a kidney transplant. She talked a lot about the struggles she went through while waiting for a transplant, and I learned about the lack of awareness surrounding the nationwide organ donor shortage in our country. Luckily, Ms. Costello received a kidney transplant a couple of years ago, and she's doing well, which is great. But we do still have work to do because thousands of people are still waiting for a life-saving transplant. I developed a passion for this issue and decided to take action in that area. So I became a Gift of Life Michigan volunteer in 2017 and have volunteered at community events to sign people up on the Michigan Organ Donor Registry. In my sophomore year, I co-founded a club at my high school called Gift 8 Lives, which raises awareness of organ donation in our student body. I also did my Girl Scout Gold Award project on organ donation, and I'm very grateful that I have been able to advocate for this great cause. And I'm looking forward to seeing what all of you have to say. So first, can we have Aisha introduce herself? Okay. I think she might be having some technical issues, so we can skip her for now and come back. So Tristan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tristan. I'm 16 old. I'm 16 years old right now. And I had a kidney transplant when I was 15 years old. And I'd say just like a fun fact is that I have 3 kidneys, but only one works. So.
All right. Alex, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Alex. I'm 15 years old, and I had my liver transplant when I was 2 months old, and I have 5 siblings, and I'm the oldest.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. So next, Devin, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Devin. I'm 16. I had a transplant when I was 9 months old. Fun fact about me is I'm the only child.
Okay. Thank you so much. And next we have Deja. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Deja. I'm 22 years old. I feel really old now. And I was 17 when I got when I received my kidney transplant. And a fun fact about myself, I have my own business.
That's cool. And you're definitely one of the older ones here, so that's great to have your perspective on this. So next we have Kayleen. You can go ahead and introduce yourself now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayleen Flannery. I'm a double lung transplant recipient. I was 19 years old when I received the gift of life, and currently I'm 31. A fun fact about me is I actually had a sibling who also had cystic fibrosis.
So yeah, we have 2 older people here, so that's going to be interesting to see how you guys, give your perspective on what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so Aisha, if you're not having any more technical issues, you can introduce yourself now.
Goodness, I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're just kind of frozen right now, but I think you can go ahead and we can hear you fine. So.
Okay, perfect. My name is Aisha Reese, and I'm a 2-time small bowel transplant recipient. I received the gift of life last May 19th, 2019. And a fun fact is that I am a musician, a performing artist.
Cool. Okay. So thank you to everyone for introducing yourselves. So I guess now we kind of have like 3 people on like the older side and then 3 people on the younger side, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question that I have. So any one of you guys can answer. I'm just going to kind of throw out the question, and then whenever you have something to add, you can go ahead and add what you want to say into the discussion. So before you guys received your transplant, did you know anything about donation?
So actually, before I received my transplant, I had heard about it, but at the time I had been going to a transplant center that didn't support organ donation and for people with cystic fibrosis. So it wasn't until I actually moved to a different transplant center that center was actually pro-transplant for people like me with CF. And that's when I kind of realized that I actually had a shot at getting a second chance at life.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that, organ donation is one of those things that like a lot of people don't know the facts and like are pretty much only surrounded by the myths unless it impacts them. So that's really great that, you were able to understand, how it saved your life. Okay, so anyone else want to jump in and add to the discussion?
I can. Before I was sick or affected by kidney disease, I didn't really think about donation. Nobody in my family had ever received a transplant. So no, I didn't know a lot about it before I was sick or before I received one.
Okay, Alex, do you want to go ahead and give your perspective?
No, I was like too young.
And what about you, Tristan?
Oh yeah, kind of like Deja. I never really thought about like donation or kidney transplants at all. Like nobody in my family or nobody that I knew of had ever been affected before I became sick. So.
Okay. So next question. How did you guys feel after you got your transplant? I know a lot of you were younger, some of you were a little older, so you remember more of it, but just how did you feel after you received your transplant?
So I'll go first again. For me, kind of at 16 was when I was told I was in beginning stages of lung failure, and if I didn't get one, I was going to die. So at that point, I could no longer do high school sports. By the time I actually received the transplant, walking 10 feet to the bathroom became a problem. You'd get 30-minute coughing spells. In the morning, you would have several-hour coughing spells. Headaches from oxygen deprivation. So as soon as I got my transplant, so you wake up and you do wake up on a ventilator while your lungs kind of adjust to you. And once they could finally pull the ventilator and I was able to breathe on my own, my mom always said that that's like watching a newborn baby take their first breath. And that was what it was. I had no concept of what a deep breath was. So to actually get to be able to truly take my first deep breath by then I was 20, because my first full day on my new lungs was my 20th birthday. So it's pretty special gift. So for me, there was a huge change. I could be active again. I could run outside again. And just, I could breathe. I could eat even without having to have coughing fits. So there was a huge difference for me.
Just to piggy off of Kayleen, for me personally as well, it's been multiple stages and processes for me. And I'm just going on just after a year of an anniversary of receiving my second transplant. But the first time, because I realized there actually were two, but the first time it felt, to explain it, it felt freeing. When you don't have the actual intestine, you're not able to eat. So I was undergoing a treatment for a very, I would say at that point it had been about 7 months. So it was slightly liberating, but I also, the first transplant just wasn't the one. And it was actually, it was freeing, but then also painful. And so that's why that one didn't work out. It was due to blood clots. But the second one, which was definitely the one, because there's been so many stages to the process of intestinal, because it's extremely, it's definitely, just as needless to say, a longevity journey of highs and lows. I would say this one was also extremely liberating. And it's just a reminder of the gift of life, and how, just as she said, a simple simply breathing, being able to inhale, exhale, simply being able to eat, which, I hadn't been able to do for 2.5 years. Just, being able to go somewhere without, having to be back home, at a certain time, like Cinderella, when the clock strikes 7, so that, so that I can be there, to receive nutrients, literally man-made nutrients. So it was very liberating, and I don't take anything for granted because of it.
Yeah, that really resonated with me, because I think, like, what we were talking about like just being able to breathe properly for the first time. It's something that we all take for granted, I feel like. So, just knowing that something that simple can mean so much, I think is just like an amazing, reason, and just in wanting to sign up on the organ donor registry. So, Devin, do you have anything you want to say?
I don't know.
So, Deja, you were about to speak, so you can go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Also, it's no problem. So like everybody else said, when I woke up, I felt better instantly. I had to be on dialysis every night, for 10 hours a day. So like that first night, not having to undergo dialysis was amazing. Like everything just started working. I don't know. I felt like a new person. I just felt better right away. I wasn't tired anymore. I don't know. So it's like a switch, like happened immediately. But yeah, like I felt brand new. Like getting a second chance at getting a new body. But yeah, I felt better instantly.
That's really beautiful, how you're able to feel the effects of that pretty much instantly, and just be able to appreciate you having a second chance. So, Tristan, do you want to add anything to the discussion?
Yeah, so I definitely, it's kind of crazy because it's like almost right as you like wake up after that surgery, you can instantly feel a difference in your energy levels, which like says a lot, because like you're waking up right from surgery and you still have more energy than, like, at least for me when I was on dialysis, I was always drained. But yeah, like especially it's kind of just like a feeling of relief. You have a lot of the things that at least for me, I took for granted before I was even sick, that now like I have a new sense of like more things to be thankful for in my life. So
Yeah. What about you, Alex?
All right. I was too young, but my mom want to say something though about this, because I was too young. I know.
So because Alex, hi everyone. So because Alex was too young, I think it took a lot for me to completely understand what was going on. I am very grateful that he did receive his transplant, and it was kind of sad at first because just seeing him lying on the bed, just very, very big, normal size, and it was just like really sad for me. I was in my first year of college, so it was like a lot for me, and my family. My family was a great big help, but it was a lot. Just learning to deal with new medications, and it was so many medications, and making sure he stays healthy, the doctor's appointments, trying to stay on top of school, and being a single parent. It was just a lot. But again, like my family stepped in a lot. They did. Just going to different doctor's appointments, and just like he had like different he had like feeding tubes at a point in time, and just staying on top of that with cleaning. It was just overall, it was just a lot. But I'm very happy that I was able to get through it, and I stayed strong for him because again, he couldn't do it. He was still a baby. So overall, we did pretty good with it.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for, sharing what you know about it. I know that since he was really little, he probably doesn't remember, but it was it was nice to get your perspective on it. Yeah. So the next question kind of ties into what you were just talking about, which is how did all of you guys talk to your friends about your transplant, and do they know that you had one?
I'll start off.
Okay.
So I live in, I'm from Flint, Michigan, but I live in New York City. And I have a huge, obviously my family has been the biggest support, in Michigan and Maryland, my aunt, all these people have been so devoted. But in New York City, I also have a huge family and community. My church that's based on the arts, and they're called the Rock Churches Worldwide. And honestly, I feel because of myself and them watching my journey, it has created such awareness to them and to people all over the world who have never heard of anything like this ever. Even myself, to hear that as I believe it was Deja mentioned, you don't think until that moment, oh my God, I need that. It was kind of my reaction as well. You're not thinking about it, but I feel because of that and them watching the process, because it's very evident, like every single person that's here, as you're waiting, the wait game shows the evidence of the process that you're going through. So everyone's witnessing it. And so because that community, I was so close to it, they were able to witness every stage that I was going through, with the drains, with the not eating, with the, all these different things. So to answer, absolutely, they definitely were able to see it, to witness it. And now that spread such awareness to them, and also has inspired them, to recognize the gift of life and to really appreciate the life that they have, and realize that even if I don't feel I possess whatever it is that I'm supposed to possess, I have the gift. I have gifts. I have life. I have wealth. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I totally echo what she said, because when I heard that my English teacher was waiting on a kidney transplant, I was really able to value my own life, I feel like, because I realized how easy it is to be put in this situation where you need a transplant to have a second chance at life, to continue what you want, your dreams, and just whatever you're striving for. So that's really great. So anyone else want to add?
Yeah. I just feel like community is important. So I always tell my friends and my family, they all know, they were with me when it was tough. So I share with as many people as I can, without going overboard, just to let them know how they should be grateful for what they have, and just share my story if I can inspire anybody to sign up to become an organ donor, or just letting them know, like, it's not too far from home. Like, I went through this, like any of your family members can go through it, or you can. So I just share my story to raise awareness.
I know for me, I found out actually around Christmas time when I was 16, and initially you are in that state of shock And so when we started the transplant process, we kept it within just my immediate core family. We didn't really extend it to our community or our friends or even our extended family until after I had gone for the transplant evaluation. And then once I found out I was a candidate, that's when we started to share with people that I was going to need a transplant. And what happened once we started to share with people is even though at the time I was living in West Virginia, my small community where I was raised for most of my life really rallied around me, having fundraisers to make sure we could even afford the transplant. And to this day, I share my story. I will answer anybody's questions they have, no matter what they want to know, because everyone wants to know something different. And I feel like it is my responsibility to my donor and to my donor's family that I do share this story to continue to bring awareness about organ donation. And then in return, that also brings awareness about cystic fibrosis and how we take breathing for granted. I mean, a lot of times in the CF community, we say take a straw and breathe through that straw, and that's what it's like having CF. So once we started speaking to people, I have been able to continue to give through Gift of Life and other volunteer efforts to make sure that they just kind of know that this is out there and this is an option. And like Deja said, this can happen to anyone at any point in time. So being aware and telling your story is the greatest way to do that because it humanizes it. It puts a face to the story.
Yeah. And I think that's really like what we're trying to do here is just, showing how there are so many people and just youth in particular, because I feel like we don't really hear, people who are on the younger side about who received an organ transplant either when they're very little or just like maybe in their teen years. We don't really hear those stories a lot. So I think it's really great that, we're targeting people of, our age demographic to be able to really value organ donation in their own lives.
Yeah, and I know for me, like my friends definitely knew about I didn't share a whole lot just because I'm not one that normally likes to go into depth with a lot of people, but I also got sick during on Christmas Eve is actually when I found out my freshman year. So when everybody came back from their Christmas break and I was like the only one that wasn't there, and I wasn't there for a while, a lot of people did start to ask questions. And so I at first just had some of my teachers I gave them just like a rough description or a brief description of it. And then obviously my closer friends knew what was happening, but until I learned to start kind of coping and getting over that hump of where you're kind of still in disbelief, which once I got over that is when I kind of started sharing and opening up more to my friends and family. So
that's really great. Yeah. I feel like having to, go through a transplant when you're in school is like a very different ballgame because, you have these things that so many of your classmates are paying attention to, like, schoolwork and all of that, but you are also dealing with, making sure that your health is in check and everything. So that's interesting to hear that perspective. Thank you so much. So our next question is kind of similar to what we've just been generally talking about. So do you share the importance of donation with family and friends? But in particular, I kind of want to know, how do you guys, talk about a sensitive topic like organ donation with, people your age, or whether it be cousins or friends or classmates? How do you talk about something that's sometimes viewed as a little taboo?
I just tell my story. So putting a face with a story. I let them know what's going on and what can happen. I don't know. My family's always pretty open to talking about, stressful topics or taboo topics. So I literally just share my perspective and always leave the floor open for questions or concerns or, just to shoot down any myths they have or any questions that they have for me.
That's really great.
I think some of the most difficult conversations, like should we get married or should we have a baby, we have them all the time. And talking about organ donation and in your end of life, I feel like it's part of our job to remove that taboo, because I don't think it needs to be a taboo subject to approach that all of us have the ability to save lives when we do pass away. And to take that stigma and that taboo away is, you just kind of have to talk about it. And when you're open and honest, I feel like they're comfortable in talking about that if you allow that. First, if you go up all intimidated, like, oh, I shouldn't talk about this, then you put that out there. But if you go up, hey, I'm a transplant recipient, you know, would you like to know some more information? They're way more than if you're like, oh, I got to talk something sensitive about you. So like, your attitude about it can also really dictate on how people receive that conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I just wanted to say that Kayleen said the key word in the previous question, which was responsibility. I feel if we're giving a second chance, and, you know, if we are living and having the gift of life, plus someone else who gave us that gift of life, then we have to carry the torch. So for me personally, it's a responsibility to make sure that we're spreading that awareness, and to also just make sure that we're being that voice, that representation. So for me, I just allow the process and my life to be the evidence of the result. So, you know, if that, and my faith has a lot to do with it. I love Christ. And so I allow, literally, a lot of times it's not even necessarily, sometimes you don't even have to say, but just be, you know, living truthfully. Like that's what, if anyone knows anything about acting, they say the Meisner technique, to live truthfully in imaginary circumstances. Well, truthfully in these circumstances, right? If we're living the truth of being, you know, the recipient, and our life is living and breathing, so then we have to make sure, and like she said, have that responsibility, play that role to show people this is a necessity, because no one thinks that they're going to be into that situation until they're actually in that situation, and really allowing them to recognize the rewards and the benefits of how they themselves can be a reproduction of life, another exchange of life. Like that's literally what we were made to do, you know, to be fruitful in that way. And there's something I recall in an intensive care unit here in Mount Sinai, where I received my transplant. They're like my family there. Transplantation 9 Center. It's a quote that says, when you go to heaven, please leave your organs here, you know, and basically saying like, you're going to go to heaven if that, you know, if that's, you know, like, in other words, if you weren't to make it, or if someone else isn't going to make it, but leave your organs here too. You know what I mean? So in other words, that's saying like your life can live on through someone else, you know? So I think it's just about how our perspective and, you know, how we're perceiving the gift of life. You know, it is a difficult conversation, but, you know, when you're a live replica, a live example, people can see it and say, this saved me, and you can be that superhero. You can save someone just like someone chose to do that for me. So that's what I would say personally. And definitely it's the same thing that I do on every platform, social media, these amazing talks like we're having now with this roundtable and beyond. So it's just a responsibility that I really, really am passionate about, making sure, in the IBD community, the inflammatory bowel disease community, letting them know that they don't have to settle. They can defy the odds of whatever they're given.
Yeah, that totally struck me, because I think that what makes organ donation so beautiful and just so amazing overall is that, you know, just one thing that you can do, something that takes like literally like less than, can be like maximum 2 minutes long, you know, like, and that can change the whole world for 8 people, you know, because one organ donor can save 8 lives. And it's not only those 8 lives that it can save, but it's also the families, you know, the people that are in those specific people's circles. So it can just change the world for so many people. And I think that's what we need to stress when we're talking to people about organ donation. So does anybody else want to pitch in about this topic? Okay, so with that, we can go on to the next question. What have you been able to experience since your transplant? So pretty much just like walk me through and walk, all the viewers through what you've been able to accomplish in your life, how organ donation has allowed you to just, be who you want to be.
For me, I got to become a college grad. I never thought, when I was in high school and started to get really sick, you picked your path. You were college bound or you were high school graduate bound. And at the time, being so sick, high school was the only thing I thought I would be able to accomplish. Then as the road path continued, I got to be 25. I had 1 year where I had no major health obstacles occur. So my doctor and I decided, okay, this may be a good time to start college and pursuing your education. I graduated in May with a degree in marketing, a minor in advertising, integrated marketing communications, and a certificate in digital marketing. That is a goal so many people with cystic fibrosis don't get to experience. I'm currently starting my own marketing firm. So these are things that a lot of people who are born with a chronic life-threatening illness, those aren't things you get to talk about. You don't get to talk about the future and what am I going to do with my life? Because at 16, when I was told I was dying, I sat down and I had a discussion with my dad of the type of funeral I wanted to be, because I didn't want my parents to make that choice. I sat down and made end-of-life decisions, why I would be on a ventilator, how long I'd be willing to be on a ventilator. So I didn't get to dream of a future. I couldn't. To think of a future just hurt too much, knowing that it would be something I could be deprived from. But beyond the education aspects and getting to start my own marketing firm, I'm an aunt to 4 amazing kids who I couldn't imagine had I not made it through not getting to be their aunt. My brother had cystic fibrosis and I got to be there for him through his journey. Even though he lost his battle in January, I got to hold his hand all through the process. I got to give him the tips and tricks that I had learned along the way so he didn't have to do it alone. And so to get to be there for him for that that was one of my biggest accomplishments too. And just growing older. I'm 31, I'm gonna be 32. When I was born, they told my parents it'll be a miracle if she makes it past her toddler years. They promised them that I would never see 13. And to be standing here, I wish I could see those doctors and just be like, look at me now, because I'm still here and I'm still going strong.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. Just it's really saddening at the thought that, you can't plan all these things and most people are planning, but I'm really happy that, you were able to get through that and get a life-saving transplant. And now you're, happy and with your marketing firm and everything. That's really great to hear. So does anyone else want to share about this topic? Like, what have you been able to do since your transplant? Just things like that.
I've been able to go to Europe and Florida, and I've been able to travel everywhere. It's been pretty cool.
That's great. I think that's some of the things that just like everyone has in common, that we all like to travel and go see what's out there in our not only in this country but just all over the world. So that's really great that you were able to experience that, Devin. So anyone else want to share?
I can share. I've just been blessed to be able to give back. One thing that's very important to me is to go back and help others that did go through the same thing that I went through before dialysis. So I love to give back. I love to speak with Gift of Life, just raising awareness. Another thing, I'm graduating college in the spring with a degree in communication, and I plan on going to law school afterwards. That wouldn't have been possible without my life-saving kidney transplant. I also have my own business, my own hair care business. I'm very active on campus. I was able to go away to school because I didn't have to have dialysis every night. So I'm just very grateful for all the things I have experienced, and I can't wait to experience more.
I would say for me, I've been playing lacrosse since I was in kindergarten, and since like I was like diagnosed with my kidney failure my freshman year. So obviously, like when I was on dialysis and while I was going through my transplant process, I wasn't able to play lacrosse anymore, which was like really hard for me because it's like the one thing that I use to like escape from a lot of things that are happening in the world. But now that I've had my kidney transplant, like I've been able to play lacrosse. I'm still on my travel team. And then like last year I was supposed to be able to play, but obviously because of some like because of the whole COVID situation last spring, like we weren't able to. But you know, hopefully I'm looking forward to this year that we can get out there and play. So
That's amazing.
Is it okay I ask something?
Oh, please. Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Since this happened, I've been able to go to a transplant camp, like kids like me, and it's pretty fun there.
That's really cool how you're going to interact with people who are just like you. I'm sure that's a really great experience. So Aisha, I think you were about to say something. You can go ahead now.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I definitely wanted Alex to go. I was just going to mention that it's so inspirational to hear. For me personally, I realize now, even listening to these things out loud, before I had my transplant, I was doing probably the same things in terms of inspiring other people, going into the hospitals, going into different places, but now it's without limitations. So for me, I guess, and it's not a guess, I never accepted my situation. To me, it wasn't the end game. Even if I didn't know what was going to happen next, I just knew that wasn't it. And in my mind, I had already made it a mission that my life, I was like this undercover to be relatable to others, to inspire others. So I forgot about myself to uplift other people. And for me, that was the process of faith to getting the miracle. I didn't know when the gift of life was going to come, but in my mind, I just knew it was going to happen. So the ministry that we birthed is in throughout all of the boroughs in New York City, where we would go into the hospitals and we would utilize the arts and inspire people. I mean, now it's not really happening as much because of this whole situation that we're calling COVID, but it was something that we were able to do. And then after that point, we were still continuing to do it. And I would say one of the things that's liberating without limitations that I am able to do is, for instance, actually swim, which was something I know I wasn't able to do for a long period of time, having a central line. So basically, that's something that could be damaging. But now all the things that seem like normal things are things that I'm like, I'm doing that, so now that opened the door for me to do that. Eating, okay. I am eating well, healthy and wholesome, so I guess for me, the only thing I would say that changed is just really doing everything without limitations and doing it whenever I want to, without someone or something telling me that I have to. But yeah, and of course, physically having more strength and being able to do what I need to do in the performance world.
That's really cool, just you being able to, I see how passionate you are about, the arts and, what you're doing right now. And it's really great to see that you've been able to continue your passion and just follow your heart wherever that leads you to go. So does anybody else want to add? Okay, I think we're good with this question. Thank you for sharing. That has been really interesting to see that perspective. So the next question I wanted to ask all of you guys is, how are you adapting to this whole COVID situation with, the information that you guys are all transplant recipients, because we know that COVID is really contagious and all of that. But because you guys are transplant recipients, there must have been some kind of precautions that you have to take early on and maybe even now. So just talk a little bit about how you're making sure that you're staying healthy during this crazy situation that we're going through right now.
So in the cystic fibrosis community, I feel like I had been unintentionally training for this my entire life. We have always been taught, during peak cold and flu season, you avoid crowds, you avoid people who are sick, you keep that at least arm length distance from people. Hugs aren't really a thing you do very often. But I've also, throughout my years having a respiratory disease already, have wore masks on and off. So that was nothing new to me. So hand sanitizing, there wasn't any major huge adjustments that had to be done in terms of adjusting to hand sanitizing and wearing masks. I go out a whole lot less, and I quarantine a little closer to home than most people, especially in the beginning when there were so many unknowns. I didn't leave my house for 8 weeks. I really hunkered down while you kind of got to a better understanding of what was happening and what was going on. And then over the summer, I did get to the point where I'm like, okay, I can go hang out with friends if we all wear masks and if we're all outside. So you kind of adjusting as it goes and as it's learning. But having CF, I really trained for this my whole life, and so that huge adjustment wasn't there.
Yeah, I know that, personally for me, obviously I'm not a transplant recipient, but when the whole COVID situation started getting really crazy here in Michigan, I think it was like around March, and, school shut down and we weren't really sure what was going to happen, even in like the next few weeks. And just having all that like uncertainty was really alarming. And, it must have just been even crazier for someone like you who had cystic fibrosis and had to deal with that. But I'm really glad that you have been able to stay healthy and you're good even now. So that's great news.
I've just been hanging out at home to be safe. My stepmom is a nurse, so she had to move out, so that's kind of hard. But yeah, I haven't really been doing much, just staying home, trying to stay safe.
So after my kidney transplant, we have like this, at least for me, like I had a 30-day period where my team and my doctors advised me, basically it was like a quarantine in itself. So I would stay home. I really wasn't allowed, to go out to any restaurants or any big crowds. If I was like outside around people, I was to wear masks. So pretty much for the whole 30 days, I was pretty much just in my house, like we all are right now. But like anytime I was in the hospital or big crowded places, like even before COVID, I always wore a mask just because with all the immunosuppressives that we're on, it's like just nice to stay safe because you never know what people have or if they're not feeling well. So just to be safe, I've always been doing that. But especially since COVID, like I definitely obviously just follow the rules and stay home. So.
Yeah, I can agree with Tristan. After my transplant, I had to stay in the house for 90 days. I couldn't go to school. I could barely leave the house, just to go to my appointments. And I wore a mask. It's been 5 years, and I used to. Now we wear masks every day. But I used to wear a mask during cold and flu season. I never really got close to anyone. But now I live on a college campus, so I'm definitely more cautious. And follow the safety precautions in place just to make sure I don't get COVID. But I've been following those rules and I've been good. So I'm just praying that everything stays good.
Yeah, I know that, college campuses in particular have been hit pretty hard because of COVID. So it's great that, not only are you following these, protocols and all of that, but that you're staying safe, and I guess it seems like your college is doing a fairly good job at keeping everybody safe, so that's great. So our next question that I would like to know is, what would you tell the world about your transplant? So this is a pretty open-ended question, I know, but just what would you want people to know about transplant, about the organ donation process, being someone younger who's gotten a transplant, just anything about your experience in organ transplantation?
So for me, I would want them to know that it's not just you think of people in their 50s and 60s, it is the youth. And in many circumstances, I hear everybody often talk about, oh, it's a second chance at life. For me personally, it was a first chance at life. Being sick my entire life, that dampened the things I could do from the get-go. Like I mentioned, not knowing what a deep breath was until I was 20 years old. That is something most people cannot comprehend. So kind of like I talked about before, putting that humanized face to this, that we are of all ages, we are of all backgrounds. Needing an organ isn't one specific route, and that everyone does have the potential to save 8 lives. And you never know whose life you will be saving or what they will grow up to be and dream and become. And when you choose to say yes to organ donation, you are changing the lives of so many people. Even though my life was the life that was saved, my parents' life was impacted. Everyone in my small community's life was impacted. My nieces and nephews know that they have an Aunt Kayleen, and I'm not just a person in a photo. And so that is a ripple effect that goes out from just the one life that can be saved. The hundreds and hundreds of people I've been able to impact just from being able to talk and continuing to live. So taking that couple of seconds to say yes to organ donation at the Secretary of State's, or logging on and declaring that that's what you want. So I want people to know that sometimes you're giving people a first chance at life to get to dream.
I would just say that was so beautiful, truly. I mean, seriously, I feel like this is the whammy question, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, mission statement of this entire thing. Well, honestly, what I would say is that our lives are miracles. Our lives are miracles. And so understanding transplantation is to understand the evidence of God's existence, the evidence of truly giving a life for a life. Because transplantation is really it's a rebirthing, it's a renewal, it's a baptism. I think that's kind of like what Deja was leaning toward earlier, is like, in terms of saying second chance at life, more so it's a refreshing, it's a new birthing, and for me that's what it is, because I'm not even interested in what I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. I'm only interested in moving forward, and that's all the things that the transplant equates to, is a new, refreshing, a miraculous movement, and a life for a life, but a life to give and multiply life, which is what we were born for.
So, Tristan, do you want to add anything to the discussion?
Yeah, I would say, like, just to let people know, like, at least for me, and I'm sure for all of you, like, how hard we all work to like keep this gift for as long as we can, and to like cherish it as much as we can, because like it truly is like a gift, and without the sacrifice of somebody else, like you wouldn't have this chance at all. So just like, yeah, just how hard we work to make sure it's as healthy, our organs are as healthy as they can be, and it just like shows how much we are thankful for that like opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. You guys have all been putting, this really loaded question into such like eloquent words. But one thing that really struck me is what Kayleen said about how, for some people it's a first chance at life. With cystic fibrosis, obviously, people tell you this and people tell you that, and you never really know what's coming. But that's great to have that like new perspective, because I never really thought about it that way. I always thought about it as like, oh, it's like a prolonging of life. It's a second chance at life. I never really thought about it being a first chance at life. So that's really cool. All right. So next question is, how did your parents handle the wait time before the transplant? Because, we've obviously gotten to hear a lot about how you guys felt throughout the process, while you were waiting, before you were sick, after your transplant. We've really gotten to see how you felt. But I want to know is, how did your parents feel about the whole process, and how did that make you feel?
My mom was definitely a trooper, because I was on dialysis every night. I didn't go to the hospital for it. She hooked me up to dialysis every single night. She became a nurse. Within 2 weeks of training, she became my nurse. So, my mom and my dad, they were like very anxious, but I only waited on the transplant list for 10 days because kids go straight to the top. So that was a blessing itself. But a lot of my friends waited 24 hours, 3 days, 5 days. So when I made it to day 10, I was like, Lord, please help me. Am I going to get this transplant? Because I was waiting longer than my friends. But no, my parents and my mom, she really was like my backbone. And I know she had like scary days, scary nights, like really tough days, but she always had a brave face, and she was always strong. Like, I was only as strong as her, and she never showed me that she was scared or anything. So she really was my backbone during the waiting process.
For me, my parents have always been my biggest supporters and have always dropped anything and everything whenever it was needed to take care of me. The whole transplant process started when I was 16. We kind of did like a pre-list, essentially, is what we called it. So by the time I was actually listed at 19, I waited 5 months. Most people at the time were waiting about 3 months. So you do get to that where you're like, oh no, like, when is this gonna come? But the stress was high. My mom was always wanting to have that very positive attitude. Like, she wasn't the person I talked to about planning my funeral. She wasn't the person I talked to about end of life decisions, because she had that, like, that's not even an option. We're not going there. And my dad had to take the heavy burden of me wanting to talk about it. So they each had different roles that they had to play. And at different times, each one had to push you differently or be there differently for you. Or one took care of you more, and then the other one took care of you, to try and balance it, to try and figure a way to cope. And the added stress of our whole situation is having my younger brother also have CF. This was just the first route. This was our first trip down it. And each time I experienced something new or something different happened or a difficult night, it was the training session for what would be for my brother. So it wasn't going to be a one and done, we can fight this and we've got this. It was going to be like, we can fight this, we can get this, so we have tools later on to help our son. And that process, I mentioned, they were told that it would be a miracle if I make it past 2 and I'd never see 13. In that same conversation, they were told that I would be an emotional burden, I would financially corrupt them, and that their marriage would end because of me having CF, that would be a whole stress on everything that they were. Just to think of that little baby having that power, and they're still married 36 years later. And at times there was difficult, but they always came together for my brother and I. They've always found a way to deal with that stress and to deal with whatever financial burdens came up. And at one point, we made a decision in my family. My brother and my mom went back to Michigan. My dad and I stayed in West Virginia waiting for the transplant. And you joke, oh, my parents live in different states. Oh, they're divorced. No, they're still married, but this is what the family needed. They knew my brother was going to need a support system. They knew I needed to be there. And it also allowed my brother to not have to see the devastation of what CF was really doing and the road he'd have to take. So to choose to know that for 3 years, you couldn't live your typical husband and wife relationship, that you had to choose your children's priorities and their well-being over everybody else's. And that sacrifice just came through time and time again. And so many parents who go through that do it. So I'm so thankful for them. And I know that I am the result of so many gray hairs for them, but they found a way to persevere, and they're still with me every step of the way, every appointment, calming me down when I need to. Even when they are freaking out, they find a way to be the parent you need. And that is something I feel like so many of us don't think about, what our parents actually go through, thinking that they may have to bury their child. And to see when they had to bury my brother, and to know that they may have to do that to me someday, it just makes me more grateful for their journey and for their willingness to be tough and to not cry in front of you and to hold your hand and tell you it'll be okay, when then themselves are scared inside and have no idea what's going to happen.
Wow. Yeah. Just to add on to that, for me, I come from a small town, Flint, Michigan, and then I live in New York City. So my parents weren't actually with me all the time, and they couldn't be. I know my mom works in the hospital. My father's self-employed. So sometimes my dad could come every now and then, and my mom and dad actually are not married anymore. But I know as soon as I graduated from college was when I began to experience situations with Crohn's disease and had to have an emergency surgery. So that was slightly traumatizing to them, because no one had ever heard of that. It was extremely traumatizing for me. So I think for them overall, it was simply ignorance. No one really knew. Even me, with what I knew, I didn't even know how to articulate it sometimes, because, sometimes with some doctors, you're another number and they just tell you facts. And when they tell you facts, it's overwhelming. Okay. And I know you guys probably know what I'm referring to. It's all these things about, oh, what can happen, X, Y, and Z, So for me, it was a lot to process, because this happened to me when I was 22 years old. Being diagnosed. So it was like I was finally out in the world, independently pursuing my career. And then boom, all these things are happening. All these things are thrown at me. And I'm like, whoa, it's overload. And then, going through a course of another treatment. And then now I'm in need of a transplant. It was like, it was slightly traumatizing. So I know for my parents, and sometimes now they are traumatized. Okay.
Oh, I think that we had some technical issues here. So if someone else wants to share while we're waiting on her to come back, you can go ahead. If not, we can, I'll move on, and then we can come back. So the next thing that I wanted to ask is, again, a very loaded question. This is actually going to be our last question. But if you could talk to your donor and your family and your donor's family, what would you say to them? Okay.
I would say thank you. Even though it's the two simplest words we think of, but it truly is. I'm so thankful. And I just don't think I could say thank you enough. I don't know if I could find all the right words to say, because they truly gave me this chance to grow a little older and get to have some more experiences. And it is because they allowed me to carry on their loved one's legacy that I'm here. And, although I physically carry a piece of their loved one, every day I'm reminded of it. Every time I take my medications, every time I get to share my story, every time I see my scars, those are a roadmap of my journey. And to just get to say thank you would be the greatest thing I could think of. I'm so thankful for them. I'm so thankful for their loved one. And I wish there was more words that could express besides thank you, because it seems so simple, but I mean, that's that's what it is, though.
Yeah, I have to agree. Thank you. Like, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but thank you. I don't want to like cry, but like I'm just so grateful. Like I wouldn't have like any. That's why I work so hard today. I take my medication. I work hard in school because someone literally passed away and gave me the gift of life. They didn't have the family didn't have to agree to it. Because at the end of the day, they still have the decision. I mean, just thank you. I'm so grateful, and I really hope that one day I can meet my donor family. Like I got my transplant around Thanksgiving time, so I'm always happy. I'm always like this time of year is the best time of year, but I know they may grieve during this time of year. So I just say I keep them in my prayers. I'm praying for them, and I'm just so thankful. So I would say thank you.
So Aisha, I know that you had some technical difficulties. So the question that I was asking here is, so if you could talk to your donor and your family, what would you say?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But it's like, what the heck? But yes, honestly, the words that I would just say is, thank you for being the definition of a true friend, because the definition of a true friend, what I've learned is one that's willing to give their life for another. And similar to what Deja mentioned, for me, intestinal transplant is tricky. It's technically still experimental, and also is based on your anatomy. So it's given through infants or toddlers. And so it's a very hard decision for the parents to make. So for me, the fact that they were so selfless that they were willing to give the life of their child, like to even fathom that to me is something really hard to digest. And even during the weight game, I know I went through different emotional feels of should I not? But honestly, I would just say thank you for being the most selfless person on the planet and the definition of a true friend. And that to me is the spirit of Christ. So I'm very grateful.
So I like to have, everyone answer this one. So how about Alex? You want to go ahead?
I'll give he or her family a hug and say thank you.
Yeah. I think like a lot of other people touched on, there's never really like you can never really pull together the right words. Just to like show how thankful you are for the gift and the sacrifice that their family and that person made. So yeah, just like everyone else, just like thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts, and like we truly do mean it. And we like do work hard every single day to make sure that their gifts last as long as possible.
That's really beautiful. I'm really liking all of your answers so far. So I think we've had everyone answer except Devin. So do you want to go ahead?
I actually know my donor family. So, and I'm pretty sure they're watching right now. So I just want to tell them thank you very, very much for everything.
Aw, that was really sweet. So that is all the questions that I had. So I just wanted to say that thank you guys so much for this amazing, insightful discussion. I really, really, truly enjoyed it. And just thanks for sharing your perspective and thoughts on this. Once again, I'd like to thank Gift of Life Michigan for providing us with this amazing opportunity, with this platform to inform other people of your guys' experiences and just what goes on truly in the organ transplantation process. Just like Kayleen said, just putting a name and a face together. and just understanding that. And I know that I have learned a lot of new information that I would not have known if I was not monitoring this event. So I really want to thank you guys for that too as well. And also a huge thank you to our amazing audience today for listening to us and what we had to say. I just want to take a moment real quick to tell everyone in our audience that if you've not signed up as an organ donor yet, please go to the Gift of Life Michigan website, or the next time you go to the Secretary of State, ask the clerk there to add your name to the organ donor registry if you wish to become an organ donor. So I hope that everybody has a great night and an amazing holiday season. Bye.